So what are you selling out to? When you're asked that question, you get a little squirmy. See, selling out sounds bad. It sounds like you're giving into something and you're letting it take hold. If someone was to call you a sellout, they would be referring to you as someone who was betraying your cause. Merriam-Webster defines a sellout as to betray one's cause or associates, especially for personal gain. Right? We all know people who we would refer to as sellouts. Maybe they betrayed a friend at work for a better job, someone who betrayed what they believed for money, or maybe we know someone who sold out for safety. The bigger question is, what are you selling out to? Because if we actually think about it, we're all selling out to something or someone. Because being a sellout isn't always a bad thing. We assume that it is because we associate it with bad things. We can think about these sellouts when we hear the term, right? You think of specific sellouts. We might think of a musician, someone like Taylor Swift, right? We can think of Taylor Swift. She started as this humble teenager singing simple songs with an acoustic guitar, songs meant for teenagers, specifically teenage girls. But now we would say she's a sellout because she's a pop icon, right? She went from a country artist with simple roots to now singing popular songs, hitting millions on the charts. We would say someone like George Lucas is a sellout. He made an iconic series with the first 3 Star Wars films. And then he sold out in the 90s to make the prequel trilogy for money. And then on top of that, he sold the rights to the films to Disney. And now we have even more movies that we didn't ask for. And we even have a Han Solo movie with a young Han Solo. And if reviews and income say anything about that movie, no one asked for that one. Or the Beatles, right? An iconic group. They started as a punk rock group that was edgy. And they went to a group that wore suits and sang a much simpler style song because their manager told them it was a better look. They even admitted that they were sellouts. We can probably think of political leaders who we would call sellouts. Right? They go into office, they have an idea of what they're going to do, who they're going to be, but they get there, they compromise on their values, their promises, and what they campaign for money, power, and success. Being a sellout is simply compromising on what you believe, who you are, or what you're about. When we look at the Bible, we can clearly see some sellouts. Probably the most famous being Judas, right? He's the definition of a sellout. He sold out his rabbi, his teacher, and his friend for some silver. Or we can think of someone like Samson, right? He sold out for love. He compromised on who he was for love. What his family and he had vowed from his birth for a woman named Delilah. For love, for acceptance, for someone to understand who he was, but ultimately it was for Delilah's gain. There are many instances of people selling out for their own gain. It seems to be a part of who we are. We're a people who love ourselves. We want what we want. We tend to not care who gets hurt as long as we make it to our end goal. If it's riches and fame, why not sell out? You get what you want. You get everything you've ever dreamed of. Why not compromise on who you are or what you want to be if it means getting everything you've ever dreamed? If there's anything, is there anything really wrong with it? We look at these sellouts as something less because they sold out and got it. But in reality, the reason we call them sellouts is because they were prideful, a jealous people focused solely on their own gain without concern for others. Right? I know you're picturing that sellout. Maybe you work with them or you feel like you work with them. But the sellouts, they're compromising on who they are to sell out. We might say something about that person. Selling out says something about that person. We can look at the sellouts of the Bible and see a similar view. Each one of them were only concerned with themselves, what they could get, who they could be, and their end goal. But not all of them were negative. Some of the sellouts actually were positive. I know that doesn't make sense, sellouts being positive. What if selling out wasn't always negative? What if you were sold out to something positive, but not just positive, but great? Imagine if you didn't sell out, but were sold out for something. I believe there is a distinction. Selling out is giving into something, betraying who you are for that. But being sold out is defined by Urban Dictionary as being fully committed, devoted, invested, and engaged to a cause, being willing to go anywhere, do anything, and give up everything in order to achieve your goal. Simply put, by any means necessary. Selling out and being sold out are different. There is a distinction. They have a similar setup, right? You're selling out or you're selling out. It seems similar. But for one, you're focused on you, while the other, you're focused on your cause, what impact you can make. I think one of the biggest people of the Bible who we would say were sold out, fully committed, no turning back by any means necessary, was Paul. Or as he was known at the time, Saul. Right, if we look at his life, he went from killing men and women, getting a declaration from the high priest saying he could take them back to Jerusalem from anywhere he went, to someone who was sold out on the mission of God. But he took these people, he would take them from their homes, from their synagogues, bringing them to Jerusalem so they would die. See, he knew his mission. He knew that he was a man tasked with saving the Jewish people. He felt like they were under siege. There was this, what he would describe as a cult. They were set on changing how everything went. This cult of people were following a dead man, a man who they claimed rose from the dead. It didn't make sense to people like Saul. He said, this isn't right. We have to go after them. We have to change it. And he said, I don't want this to spread. So we see in Acts 9, 1-6, he was on a journey to Damascus to try to destroy what the men and women of the way were trying to build. And it says, but Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogue at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven shone around him, and falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do. Saul, very simply, in that moment, was faced with a crossroads. Sell out to everything that you've ever known. Sell out to your family, your friends, everything that you've ever believed at your core, or be blinded by the Lord. See, in that moment, he faced the Lord. He came in contact with God, and he knew it. The people traveling with him knew it. Just look at his reply. Who are you? Lord? Right, so he knows in that moment that he came into contact with Jesus. The real obvious thing is, who else was he persecuting? Right? If he feels the need to go, who is this? Lord? Like there's no back and forth. It's, you're persecuting Jesus. He said, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He wasn't persecuting anyone else. He was persecuting Jesus. He knew who he came into contact with in that moment. He came into contact with God. In reality, he knew it. He'd heard the stories. He wasn't going around persecuting anyone else. He was persecuting the people of Jesus, the ones who were following the teachings of Jesus. Saul was now blind. Imagine you're him. You're going to destroy this cult, the way. what you perceive as this cult in that city, and the focus of that group. God himself, wrapped in human flesh, comes down to you, faces you, and says, "Why are you persecuting me?" He corrects you. He comes to stop you, to change you completely. And we see later in that same chapter, in verse 19 and 21, it says, "For some days he was with the disciples at Damascus, and immediately he proclaimed Jesus in the synagogues, saying, 'He is the Son of God.' And all who heard him were amazed and said, 'Is this not the man who made havoc in Jerusalem of those who called upon this name? And has he not come here for this purpose, to bring them bound before the chief priests?'" Right? We see a complete alteration in his stance. He comes in, he goes, "I'm going to kill them. I'm taking them with me, and they're gonna die." And then a couple days later, he's like, "This is the Son of God." Right? There's a complete alteration in who he is. He had sold out. He was fully committed, sold out on the idea of who Jesus was. For him, he was completely transformed. From that moment forward, he was made new. He was sold out on the mission, the cause. His life was now focused completely on the mission of God. His name even changes to illustrate that point. He goes from Saul to Paul. Not a big change, just a couple letters, but it completely changes who he is. And he goes not to capture people, but to captivate the hearts of the people around him. See, there is a distinction. We look at selling out as a negative. Maybe we miss the type of music the artist used to make. Maybe we miss the type of movies the actors acted in, or the type of films the director made, but we feel like they were selling out for the money. Or maybe we really liked that politician until they got into office and the power consumed them. The favors and the fancy meals and the lobbyists got to them. But selling out can be positive. It can be transformative. It can change your entire perspective. Paul is an example of that. His life was completely transformed, completely renewed. He experienced the awe and wonder of God. He came in contact with Jesus and left changed. See, the world tells us that selling out is about money, power, and success. But Jesus says selling out is giving it all to him, to fully commit, to allow your life to become flipped upside down. But we have to commit. We have to be sold out. We have to become sold out. I want to be sold out. See, if we are truly going to follow God, to commit to him, it's not going to be easy. No one who ever followed Jesus had it easy. See, we have this distorted view of God here in this sanctuary. And I know that sounds crazy, but we take things for granted because of our freedom to practice our faith. In many places around the world, that can't happen. Not like this. In many places around the world, they meet in secret because they have to. In homes, in basements, in places people wouldn't look because they have to. It's illegal, and the government or your neighbors and family will retaliate against you if they find out. Last year alone, 4,136 Christians around the world were killed for their faith. That's 11 Christians a day. Last year, 1,266 churches or faith-based buildings were attacked. 2,625 Christians were arrested, sentenced without trial, and imprisoned. The top 5 most dangerous places to be a Christian are North Korea, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, and Pakistan. Churches in North Korea are underground. They're hiding from the government. There's thousands of Christians there, but they don't practice openly because they can't. They meet in homes or other places in secret, and the punishment is severe. Generally, if you are found out to be a Christian, you face labor camps for years, if not death. In Somalia, people who are found out to have been of faith, there's no trial, no jury, just execution. They will behead you. China is ramping up its persecution of Christians. The churches have to be registered and can at any time be shut down. The government monitors who attends. They have cameras placed on the pulpits so they can watch you, so they know what you're saying. And in China, pastors have faced years in prison, the loss of family, and much more. To add the cherry on top, teachers and medical workers are told they can have no faith-based religious affiliation. Persecution for them in all of these countries is an everyday occurrence, but it's worth it. They're sold out for the cause. They know their safety isn't promised. They know at any moment their world could come crashing down and could be completely transformed. But it's worth it for them. Jesus is worth it for them. But we sit here in our pews listening for an hour, trying to get refreshed with at least one Bible in our home and maybe a Bible on our phone. And we question why we don't see God moving. Why it's not easy to be a Christian in the U.S. Why we feel persecution. We don't know true persecution. I don't know true persecution. But countless Christians around the world know about persecution, and Jesus is worth it for them. The best part is that the church isn't dwindling in these countries. You think it would because of the persecution, but no, it's thriving. The churches are expanding. People are coming to faith every day. It's transformative to them. They're fully committed. They're sold out, no turning back. Jesus is worth it for them. See, we're a lot like this woman in a story that I heard earlier this week. We come to church, we feel like we're there to learn something, but we sit around and we hear a lot of stuff. So this woman comes to church, talks to the pastor and says, "Look, pastor, I'm done. I'm not coming to church anymore. I just can't stand it." And he goes, what's wrong? He goes, "I'm tired of the people gossiping. They're laughing, people being hypocritical, people living in sin, and people that are too focused on their phones." So the pastor says, "Before you go, I want you to do one thing for me. I want you to take a cup, fill it to the brim with water, and then I want you to walk around the church 3 times. So he gives her the cup, she takes it, and she begins to walk around the church. Just imagine this. We're in service, you see a woman walking around the church with the cup. Right? It's filled to the brim. You don't want to drop any. That's the point. She finishes, she gets to the end, comes back to the pastor. "Pastor, I'm done. I walked around the church. Here's your cup back. I'm leaving." And he says, "Before you go, I have a question for you. What did you hear?" And she said, "Pastor, I didn't hear anything. I'm so focused on the cup. I didn't want to drop even a single drop." "What did you see?" "Pastor, I told you I didn't see anything. I'm sitting there with the cup. I didn't want to drop anything." And he says, "That's the point." He said, if you're so focused on God, so focused on what he's doing. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. You don't see it, you won't hear it. It doesn't matter. See, isn't that the point? We come to church, we expect it to be one way, but if we're so focused on God, it doesn't matter. It's like that for those churches around the world. They're so focused on God, it doesn't matter what's going on around them, because he is their focus. See, the woman believes she's right. She believes that she can just leave. But the focus is where it needs to be. Where is our focus? Are we sold out? Are we fully committed? Because like Paul, we can be transformed. Jesus is waiting right there with arms wide open to accept you for who you are. And if you feel like you aren't good enough, you're in good company. Just look at Paul. Jesus accepted him, and he was a murderer. He killed people. He helped murder people who were following the teachings of Jesus. He murdered people that were following Jesus when he was alive. So trust me, there's nothing you can do or have done that will make Jesus love you any less. And God consistently uses broken pieces to make beautiful works of art. We just have to follow him, trust him, and be sold out. Luke 9:23 says, "And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." Let's pray. God, we come to you this morning just asking for a transformation of our hearts. Completely transform us like you did Paul. Help us to be fully sold out, to commit, to believe that it doesn't matter what's going on around us in our churches or the world around us, because you are our focus. We want to be sold out on what you are doing, your mission. Help us not to care about what's going on. Help us to be like the persecuted church, to focus on you. That our lives, the things that make us comfortable don't matter. You do. Help us to know you more. Help us to pray for our brothers and sisters around the world in the persecuted church. Help us to not take for granted the freedom that we have to practice in places like this. God, just help us consistently to know you and love you more. In your name we pray. Amen.